everybody. All right, so extremely excited to be here. Really delighted to see so many familiar faces in the crowd as I'm scanning here. A lot of new friends, a lot of old friends. It's so great to be back in one physical space. I want to thank you all for making it here to Philadelphia. We tried our best to pick like the 2 nice days out of the year that happen in Philly, and I think we got them. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the things that we have observed and learned in the market just by virtue of being kind of at the place that we are sitting inside of the ecosystem. In order to do that, I want to walk you through just a little bit of kind of the Crossbeam story, along with a little bit of what we see for the future. So the question really then is like, how do we learn about all these things? A lot of what brought many of you here is the amazing work that our content team, including Sean and our amazing designers and copywriters have done. And it's been really remarkable over the last 2 or 3 years to see things like our State of the Partner Ecosystem report, which I hope you've all seen and read. Most recently, it had 433 respondents and thousands of downloads, kind of helping us just collect the general consensus around everything from what partner managers and partnership leaders are earning to how their organizations are prioritizing partnerships and beyond. All the way to Partnerbase, which many people don't know about Partnerbase, but it's this website that we build and maintain that's basically a giant data store of all of the partnerships that exist out there in the world, beyond who's on Crossbeam, just the entire ecosystem of connectivity between B2B companies. We're now tracking over 250,000 partnerships on Partnerbase. It's a really awesome resource. And of course, the content that exists on the blog and throughout all of our white papers and all of our content and webinars throughout the year, which now we've got over 30,000 subscribers on our email list. And I just want to extend a huge thank you to the content team and the team that pulls it all together, and you all in this room, because so many of you that are in this room today have been interviewed for blog posts, have been interviewed for case studies, have contributed data to Partnerbase, have answered the surveys on the state of the partner ecosystem. And a lot of what I'm about to say is kind of grown out of you. It's grown out of that data and insight that you've all provided. The other thing that maybe is even more exciting is this incredible, just meteoric rise in the number of companies that have joined the Crossbeam network. And I want to share a little animation here, which is maybe my favorite animation in the world, which is watching the growth of the Crossbeam network come together over time. What you see here, every dot on this chart is basically a company that is on Crossbeam. The lines on the chart are the connections that exist, the partnerships that are there. And if it'll rewind in a second, we'll get back all the way to when the company was founded and we launched back in early, there it is, September 2018. These early dots, right? If you think about this story, the network effects here are so profound because at this point in time, this was just our friends and family, right? Getting any companies on that we could. And I'm sure many of you in the crowd joined in at that early time. But what happened over time is this thing kind of got a mind of its own. And what was really amazing is as we see diversity in the number of industries that are on Crossbeam, in the number of stages of companies, in the number of use cases that they have, what we start to get is a more holistic picture of the partnerships ecosystem at large. And it allows us to do a bit more storytelling and a bit more answering of the big questions of what's going on and what we're really seeing. So here it is, like here's what we're seeing. I want to dig in a little bit, right? But the most important takeaway here is this idea that partner ecosystems will be the most prolific and efficient growth lever that businesses can build in the coming decade. I want to say that again. Partner ecosystems will be the most prolific and efficient growth lever businesses can build in the coming decade. This is a big thought. And it may be a controversial one. I'm sure if you all went to a conference for outbound sales, or you went to a conference for third-party data, or you went to a conference for ABM, or probably, hey, a lot of the companies you work for, right, might take issue with this statement. But we have a vision around this, and we have a level of excitement around this because things are actively changing in the universe of partner ecosystems. We are at this inflection point in this market, and it becomes very, very, very exciting when you start to dig in. And the reason is that growth playbooks are being rewritten. The way that companies grow is fundamentally changing. I would be really, really bad at my job if I didn't have at least one slide in this presentation showing you this. This is the performance of a number of markets over the course of recent months. It's actually worse than this. I think this is from a week or two ago. But we're showing the NASDAQ down 25%. Obviously, the S&P down over 15 points. But perhaps most concerning, this emerging markets cloud, this is the Bessemer Cloud Index, which is showing down 55%. I think it's down north of 60% now at this point, since basically the November highs of the market. And it raises some really big questions, right? I think things that I'm going to chat with a little bit with Sarah Wang from Andreessen Horowitz, who's coming out in a minute or two. But I think the biggest among them is, what does this mean for companies like ours over the course of the coming years? Well, it has big implications on how we grow. It has big implications on how capital gets deployed. And because of that, it has big implications on all of our jobs. And what I want to talk about today is the way that this story actually dovetails really well with this idea around this big change that's happening in the world of partnerships. Historically, in the partnerships world, when you have a downturn, it can be very concerning because you kind of think about partnerships teams as being very hard to measure attribution on, being very hard to kind of get credit for the work that's been done. And I think a lot of the story that we're about to show here is actually around why that's changing and why that's flipping. And I want to dig into that a bit. Let's start here just talking a little bit about some of the things that are going on in the market that are real paradigm shifts that feel different from 10 years ago. When I started my first company, RJ Metrics, back in 2008, kind of right after Lehman Brothers collapsed, there was this book by Aaron Ross, which is still to this day a great book and worth the read, called Predictable Revenue. Has anybody read Predictable Revenue? Familiar? Oh, so many hands. Amazing. So we've all read Predictable Revenue. Aaron's amazing. But it's 11 years old at this point. And I think when, in kind of the early 2010s, when predictable revenue was picking up speed, what do you see happening? This whole book, by the way, the whole thesis is about outbound sales, SDRs, building scalable pipeline generation through cold outreach, basically. And you see an entire generation of technology tools come up on the heels of this movement. You see the mass adoption of this strategy by companies at large, and it kind of goes through this classic kind of hype cycle curve. You get the early adopters that pick it up. They do it really well. It's a source of arbitrage. They're the first people in the market that are doing it. And then over time, you kind of get into a little bit of this becomes more of a commodity. This becomes something that is so widely adopted that the actual leverage that you get out of being one of the people doing it gets more and more and more standardized. And the difficult thing about outbound sales is that it really is a zero-sum game. The buyer's attention, the amount of room that exists in their inbox is finite. And when there are one or two companies doing it and doing it well, it's very, very different than a situation where every single company is running this playbook. And what we get to in this world then, as we get to this plateau of productivity, as we get to this universal adoption around cold outbound sales, what you also get to is a drop in the effectiveness and an increase in the cost of this methodology. And I think any company that's out there trying to generate pipeline through outbound right now is feeling this, right? The other major trend that we see happening is the death of the cookie. And you kind of combine GDPR, CCPA, the regulatory pressures around data protections with these major platform moves by folks like Apple to allow the suppression of cookies embedded inside of applications. You see GDPR required kind of cookie allow, disallow banners that exist on websites that are suppressing cookie prevalence everywhere. And we end up in a space where you've got an entire other category of how companies can invest in growth that is suffering now. The ability to target effectively, the ability to spend dollars on a large volume of ad inventory and end user target inventory is shrinking as the cookie shrinks. So again, you get into this other category, a classic place to put dollars to grow, where effectiveness is going down and price is going up. So what does that mean? Well, it means there need to be other ways. It means there needs to be opportunities for people to find growth in methods that are prolific and that are efficient. And this is where partner-led growth comes into play. And I want to talk about 3 reasons why this is of particular excitement. The first one in general here is just what is happening in the technology landscape around partnerships in general. So many people that are in the crowd today. I had a lot of good drinks last night with folks at the happy hour that are actually in the partnership technology space, right? Building tools for people that are in the business of building partnerships. And when you look at it, the history of how innovation happens in SaaS kind of happens in this really beautiful cycle, right? You have some new technology that gets introduced, and then that technology itself creates new kinds of data. You have these new data silos, you have new APIs where that data can be extracted, and then that data allows for ecosystems to get built, interconnectivity to happen between that data and other systems, and you find new product integrations that in turn eventually actually lead to new technology being built. We see this cycle happen over and over again. How many new companies that are unicorns or larger have grown out of the Salesforce App Exchange ecosystem that started out as basically just an attachment and integration into that technology? How many has Microsoft spurned, right? How many of the folks that exist in the AWS marketplace have built into really enormous businesses on the shoulders of those platform giants? Well, we've seen this just about everywhere. It's the currency of our careers at this conference, right? Those tech integrations evolving into something big that creates a lot of value. But why hasn't it happened in partnerships tech over the last decade? If you look at it, really, the number of new companies coming out, call it prior to 2018, that were building technology for partnerships professionals was so much less and so much slower than what you saw in everything from sales and marketing to customer success to finance to product to people. And the reason is that step 2 was missing. There was no new data coming out in the partnerships world because partnerships tools were still stuck in this very siloed universe. But partnerships inherently is a collaborative discipline. It's something where interoperability between companies, collaboration between companies, is going to be the source of that new data. And what we've seen happen since 2018 with the emergence of tools like Crossbeam is that we've been able to build this new data source, this new data layer that has really never existed before, which is basically what sits at the center of that Venn diagram between you and all of your partners. And now Crossbeam can inform that new data piece of the cycle, and the cycle can actually continue. And you can start building these really amazing new technology platforms right on top, right on the backs of that data. And whether it's stuff that we're building in our own application, or it's something that exists in this kind of new discipline of this ecosystem CRM that you're all seeing that's built on top of that data, in either case, it's good for this partnerships industry because it means that all of a sudden you can do things that are measurable, you can do things that are scalable, you can do things that kind of point back to the ROI generated by these partner activities. So when you talk about shared pipeline, you talk about data updating in real time, you talk about being able to do attribution across partners. These are all things that get unlocked by that new data layer, and we're only starting to see the very beginning of that work. You can think about if there's any SQL nerds in the universe, right? At the end of the day, all it really is a join key, right? We're attaching data from you and data from your partners, and there's this glue that sits in the middle. And if you can join those things together, you unlock this incredible potential to build basically a networked economy of applications that can sit on top of it. And it's very, very exciting. So this is what our partner cloud is all about, right? You look at the partner cloud of Crossbeam. Chris Samila is in the house somewhere. I'm sure many of you know Chris. That work that we're doing is all about making this cycle become very virtuous within this space. Whether it benefits us directly or not, the idea is that we unlock the data, we unlock the storytelling around that data, and that turns into ROI and growth for all of us in this industry. And that's what's very, very exciting. We've got 20 plus of these integrations in the partner cloud today. We think we're going to 10x that over the next couple of years, just based on the inbound interest that exists around people building on top of this data. And it's wildly, wildly exciting. The other thing I want to talk about here is the power of network effects. Now, you saw that network graph that I put up there. I don't want to talk about Crossbeam's network effects. I could talk about that all day, but there's reasons why network effects matter beyond the realm of Crossbeam as well. And it's because every company out there wants to benefit from network effects. They're incredible. They scale fantastically. They create a very natural stickiness. They are very uniquely valuable to the people that benefit from them because their place in those networks ends up becoming proprietary to them. Andrew Chen, another partner from Andreessen Horowitz, recently released this book, The Cold Start Problem. It kind of tells this story that the entire ecosystem will stay on a network because the value is in bringing everyone together, and that's the magic. And when you think about the work that you all are doing inside your partner organizations, what are you doing but building out a network and creating network effects? The interconnectivity that exists between your company and the companies that you connect with puts you into this fabric of technology. It's not just a stack. It's not just a individual kind of hub and spoke network like you would see on the left of the screen here. It's what's going on the right, which is this is pulled directly from one of our visualizations on Partnerbase. But you look at a Partnerbase profile, which shows the network graph of any given company's partner ecosystem, and it's never that hub and spoke. It's always this deep, deep, deep interconnectedness that exists between not just a company and its partners, but relationships between those partners and those partners' partners. This fabric, this mesh, it is sticky, and it is resilient, and it is extremely powerful from a technology value story. Because when you start to talk about how two products work together, It becomes exponentially more interesting when you get a third product and a fourth, and you start to get this story of a true kind of cross-product value proposition happening. And that's the work that we all do by putting these partnerships together. And by building out these ecosystems for your company, you are allowing your company to tap into network effects, even if its core go-to-market model is not one that's driven by network effects to begin with. It creates this stickiness out there in the ecosystem at the technology level, if not at the user level. And the other thing that's great about that is, I talked earlier about, in the universe of ads or in the universe of outbound sales, when you go through these hype cycles and you get this large-scale adoption, because it's a zero-sum game, you end up in a spot where you get these diminishing marginal returns. The last person to try this strategy is going to get a lot less value out than the first person to try it. Not true at all with ecosystems. Ecosystems are not a zero-sum game. That old trope of 1 + 1 = 3 applies in such a huge way here, because it really allows companies to turn what they have at their core into something that is worth more when combined with other things. And that creates this net larger value that comes out the other side. So a lot of the challenges that come with scale in these other methodologies actually don't hit with partner-led growth. In a lot of ways, it actually becomes more and more powerful as the adoption becomes wider and wider, because the networks grow and they become stickier. And this is so wildly exciting. We see this in our business. We see this in our customers' business. It's incredible. We use, in our last State of the Partner ecosystem, we used outer space as a metaphor. Instead of talking about all these network graphs and everything, what you really think about is these galaxies that are made up of solar systems. That certainly there's big companies that are these supernodes that have these centers of gravity and those who orbit around them. But everybody's gravitational pull affects everybody else's in some way. And even the biggest supernodes are kind of pulled in and gravitate around each other. And we try to use this in a lot of our imagery here. And I think it's really apt. And it also means, once in a while you get these seismic shifts. You get these, these big star explosions that happen that allow for major changes in the market, and we keep an eye out for that. The third thing I want to touch on is just impact beyond the partnerships organization. When we talk about the technology having been locked up within the partnership world, having not been as interconnected in the org, having not been innovated on before a few years back for a while, what you end up with these very insular product teams. You end up with product teams that are basically looking at their own work internally and kind of inwardly focused, despite the fact that the whole purpose of a partner ecosystem is to be a force multiplier for the rest of the organization. And we do a lot of this in our content, talking about the importance of partner leadership being a cross-functional discipline. Not just the person that runs partners being the person that's on top of that piece of the org, but a person that is an active participant in the leadership team, if not the executive team of a company, and having a really major influence on the way that business strategy happens on the whole, whether it's on the product side, the go-to-market side, or beyond. This chief ecosystem officer, I'm still out there looking for them in the wild. I don't love the CEO title being co-opted, but I'll take it if it's in this particular case. A really exciting concept, and I think kind of speaks to, and a lot of what's in this article speaks to this idea that these leaders have a responsibility to make sure that the work that gets done by partnership organizations stretches out well beyond just what happens in that partnership silo. We asked this question: which department at your company benefits the most from your integration in the last State of the Partner ecosystem? And sales here really got a resounding winning answer. What's exciting then is customer success is the next one. There's some in product. What you do see here is an overwhelming allegiance, right, to the actual revenue dollars. When you talk about people saying that sales gets the most benefit from technology integrations, gets the most benefit from partnership programs that exist out there, what does that mean? What that really means is that the partnership activities are getting closer and closer and closer to the dollars. And the closer to those dollars we get, the more exciting it becomes, because that's where a lot of this attribution, storytelling, being able to actually speak to partnerships as this prolific and efficient growth lever really comes to life. And what we hope you find at this conference through the various breakout sessions and panels and talks and other things that are happening over the coming days is that you are going to see these things in action. You're going to see case studies of companies using this data to really drive the growth inside of their entire organization. You're going to see storytelling from leaders in the venture capital world, from leaders in the finance world, talking about how they think and process partnerships as part of a holistic business strategy for this next generation of growth. And you're going to see and talk to your peers in informal settings, whether it's at the dinners or the happy hours or other places, and hear how this stuff is really coming to life and coming together. And I really encourage you all to take full advantage of that. What's most exciting to me is that I look around this room and I see the actual human beings that are going to shape this story. Inflection points don't just magically happen due to externalities. They get helped by externalities. They get accelerated by externalities. But it ends up being that human factor, those individuals that come together and decide that we are in the face of a paradigm shift in our industry and make that real and believe that together and push it forward. And I feel like that is where we are right now in partnerships. And we're proud to be doing what we can, but it's really the humans in this room, the 30,000 people on that email list, and the many, many others that are engaging with the strategy around ecosystem growth that are going to make that real. I went out to our little visualization engine where we show that giant network graph, and I ran an updated query just filtering on the domain names of all of your email addresses. Don't worry, I did it in a GDPR compliant way. So I fed that in, right, and basically took the network graph and I shrunk it down to just the companies that are here at this conference. And this is what this looks like. First of all, what's exciting to me is it took us almost 2 years of building Crossbeam to build a network graph that looked like this on our entire platform, right? So just at this conference right now, we basically have a Crossbeam circa summer of 2020, like bouncing around. There's 154 companies that are on the Crossbeam network that are at this conference. 694 partnerships exist just between the companies that are here already. If you include partnerships that those companies have that are not here, it's over 4,000 partnerships that are held by those 154 companies on the network. We've got 300 plus amazing humans in the room. What we have here is what Andrew Chen likes to call an atomic network. This is a very valuable, internally driven, large enough to be exciting version of the network. We've even got a few network nodes kind of hopping around the outside there who I'm sure they have a lot of their partners on Crossbeam, but none of their partners are here. Let's try to attach them in a little bit over the course of this conference. If you actually, you'll hear about this in one of our sessions, but if you log in to Crossbeam from your mobile device, you will actually see a QR code and an ability to send invites back and forth from your mobile devices if you've got the right rights in your Crossbeam account. So we'll keep an eye on that. If we get a couple of new partnerships that spark in this event, we'll call it bonus points. But the main takeaway here is this is amazing, right? We have a very true ecosystem alive here right at this event, let alone what's going on outside of it. And I hope that we get to take full advantage and you all get some great quality time together as a result. So with that said, I'm going to bring Sean back on stage for a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to jump right back out with Sarah Wang from Andreessen Horowitz. We're going to dig into the markets. We're going to dig into partnerships, what's going on in the boardroom when partnerships come up, and we'll learn a whole lot more. So I'll see you in just a few minutes. Thanks.